Hi, this is Greg Thomas, and welcome to the Welsh-American channel. Our channel is dedicated to exploring the rich history and contributions of Americans who have Welsh heritage. Today, we have a special podcast to discuss the significant life of Morgan Morgan. And as the grandson of Thomas Thomas, I can appreciate his name. He is traditionally credited as the first permanent white settler in modern day West Virginia. In this podcast, we will primarily focus on the settlement in West Virginia. In a future video, I promise you, we will explore his entire life from his birth in Wales until his death in 1766 at Bunker Hill. Today, I am excited to have with us Matthew Howard. I met Matt when I visited Morgan's second cabin a few months ago, which in 1976 was rebuilt as a replica of the original. Matt is a researcher and a historian who enjoys archaeological exploration. He is also proud of his Native American ancestry. So, Matt, welcome to the Welsh American channel and tell us a bit about your connection to preserve the legacy of Morgan Morgan.
Thank you, Greg. It's very good to see you again. And my connection to Morgan Morgan began about 6 years ago. As you noted, I am a researcher. I do mostly indigenous archaeology. But one of my friends, he's a retired geologist, was part of the Morgan Cabin Committee, a committee that's been in existence for close to 50 years now. Some of our members have been on that committee for over 40 of those years.
Mm-hmm.
Just very deep dedication to the preservation of the Colonel's legacy. So he basically asked me to attend a meeting, and I thought, well, that's a little out of my spectrum because I do Native American, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm also very proud of my British connections, my heritage to Europe.
Sure.
And I thought this could be interesting. And so I attended a meeting, and I immediately noticed some things that they were saying. And again, I look at it from a different perspective. The committee members, a lot of them were parents when I was in high school of kids that I went to high school with. So I was very familiar and comfortable with the majority of them. But I told the committee when they asked me to come back a second time, I said, well, I'm very interested. But I need to make something clear. That is, we're doing a good job, or you're doing a good job telling the
Mm-hmm.
story of Colonel Morgan, but you're leaving 2/3 of the story out.
Hmm.
And they said to me, what do you mean? I said, we don't know for sure that the Colonel owned slaves, but we're pretty sure he did. We know his great grandson did,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't have any documentation. But we also know that there were people already inhabiting this land when the Colonel arrived. There was nothing mentioned about Native Americans. So I said to the committee, I would love to join your committee and continue the great work you're doing, preserving Colonel Morgan's heritage, the cabin,
Mm-hmm.
etc. But I think it's time we start telling the full story, all three parts of that story. And to their great credit, they all looked at me and said, we never thought about it like that. Would you be that voice? And I just gained immediate respect for that perspective and that attitude. So I've been with them now 6 years. I'm vice president of the Historic Morgan Cabin Association.
Wonderful.
I do a lot of the historical research. I do a lot with holding the festivals and the different events that we have at the cabin.
And I might add that Matt is hands-on. I met him when he was preparing for an event, and he was there taking care of some of the landscaping needs. So Matt goes beyond just theory and talking about history. He gets his hands dirty as well to preserve the legacy of Colonel Morgan. So, Matt, around 1729 to 1731, Morgan and his family moved westward in what at that time would have been the Virginia backcountry. That's now Berkeley County, West Virginia, and that was on the outer edge of British colonial expansion. at the time, and Colonel Morgan is credited with building the first permanent European American home there. It was a log structure on Mill Creek near Bunker Hill. And in my discussions with you, I believe the first home is now decayed and it's on private property, so we weren't allowed to go there. But what do we know about that very first cabin that he built?
Well, your timing is impeccable because for years we have been trying to gain access to that property.
Hmm.
And the gentleman who owns the property at the time was his wife was having health issues. So respectfully, we backed off
Hmm.
and never, we asked once, he said not now. We gave him his privacy. A few months ago, we had our fall festival and he attended.
Oh, nice.
And he came up
Great.
to our little booth and he said, "Hey, I hear you have a research team, and I own the William Morgan House over on Gold Miller Road. And
Hmm. Hmm.
this is where the Colonel's first cabin was." He said, "Would you guys be willing to come out and start researching it?" So we are in the beginnings of coordinating with this gentleman, the homeowner, and he's excited for us to come out here in the next few weeks. We're really waiting for the foliage to go dormant because
Hmm.
this property is wooded. So,
Okay.
but in a few weeks in this area, it will be what I call a clean site where we can see everything. He believes that there might be some Morgan graves there. Now,
Wow.
that would be groundbreaking because
Hmm.
we don't know of any Morgans buried there. We do know that it was around 1726 that the Colonel built the starter cabin on that property. There is a small spring there. And then he began building the current cabin, the replica that we have today in 1731. So he did
Hmm.
live there for approximately 4 to 5 years before starting the current Morgan cabin location next to what we call Torytown Run, which is an even larger spring,
Hmm.
which is why he chose that location. It's just an amazing spring. I drink out of there every summer when we're working on hot days. It's just
Hmm.
a great resource for him. So we're
Yeah.
really, really excited to visit the William. Now, I believe it's 1842, Colonel Morgan's great grandson built a house. We don't know if it's on top of the original cabin foundation because we haven't gotten out there yet to check.
Hmm.
We suspect it might be. Regardless, this house is described as a very unique architectural style. It's more like a Greek style house, and for this area, it was a very rare site. It's been in many architectural magazines, and so we're that's
Hmm.
who currently owns it. I mean, it was the original William Morgan house from around 1842.
That is incredible. And please keep me updated on
Yeah.
the archaeological research you do in that original site of his first cabin. So you mentioned spring. Are there any other reasons, thinking of all the land, the huge tract of land that he had, why did he build those two cabins at that spot rather than somewhere else?
Well, he was given a 1,000 acre tract of land.
Hmm.
So on that 1,000 acres, he has to decide, where do I want my cabin? So, of course, the most important resource for any human is water.
Right.
So in that small area there between Goldmiller and Runnymede Roads, there are multiple springs. And as I previously mentioned, the
Hmm.
starter cabin had a small spring there.
Right.
I don't know if he was aware of the larger spring before he started the starter cabin,
Hmm.
or I don't know his thinking. But the larger spring known as Torytown Run provided him a lot more in the terms of water volume. It gave him a lot more of what they call marl, which is a mineral that they use to make mortar with. You mix with
Hmm.
horsehair, becomes marlite that he needed to build the cabin. It's right there in that small spring. So
Right.
he basically, I think he had the starter cabin, and for whatever reason, he decided to build at the current Morgan cabin location because of that large spring. But this area, as you mentioned, was the Wild West.
Hmm.
There were less than 200 people living within 50 miles of what is Bunker Hill and Winchester.
Incredible.
So he wasn't a young man. Let's keep that in mind. He was 41 when he decided to pick
Hmm.
up his wife, and I believe 6 of his kids came with him. I think 2 of them were born at the cabin. But if you can imagine, this cabin is just around 500 to 600 feet total, and
Wow.
you
Hmm.
have 8 kids and mom and dad living in there.
That's incredible. So eventually, he builds the second cabin, which is the one that was rebuilt, the one that I visited with you. Um, you perhaps know about this home and its history more than any other living person. You give tours, you take care of the property. Tell us about this home that's called Morgan's Cabin, and can still be visited today. And I would certainly encourage anyone to take a weekend trip and visit. You can call ahead and schedule an appointment, I believe, if you'd like a nice tour. But tell us about Morgan's Cabin that can still be visited today.
Absolutely, yeah. We do have a Facebook page called Historic Morgan Cabin Association. I actually take care of the social media.
Hmm.
I would
Okay,
encourage folks to send me a private message, and we always find volunteers, usually myself, but we have others
sure.
that will come out there, and we'll give you the full tour. And we'll show you inside the cabin, around the grounds, and adjacent properties, including next door, the Zacquiel Morgan property. But the property, built in 1731, by 1976, all that was left of it due to age was
Hmm.
just the bottom portion of a few walls and some flooring.
Oh my.
Even the
Hmm.
chimney had fallen in. And
Wow.
so in 1976, Berkeley County government decided it's our bicentennial. Let's do something to honor the history, not only of
Hmm.
Berkeley County, but also West Virginia as well.
Hmm.
So what they did was they raised the money, and they would uh, commission Douglas Reed, who is a professional historic cabin builder from Pennsylvania. And first they did an archaeological survey before they brought in the cabin builder. And they found a lot of artifacts from the colonel's time period, of course.
Hmm.
But after they did the survey, they began to rebuild the cabin. And they decided that they were going to try their best to build it to the exact same specs that the colonel built his cabin. And they decided that they wanted to use only local wood. They wanted
Hmm.
to try to use as little machinery as possible, much like the colonel did. The timbers, for example, the rafters, everything is hand hewn.
Hmm.
They even included, at the time when the colonel arrived here, again, there were Native Americans living here. He didn't know if they were hostile. So they even put in a shooting port
Hmm.
inside the cabin wall that you can quickly push that board out, extend your rifle, and defend your home.
Oh,
It,
interesting.
it had a rope attached that when all was clear, you simply just pulled it back in.
Hmm.
That's something you would have seen in a mid 18th century cabin, and
Yes.
we incorporated that as well. So the county did a fantastic job. Douglas Reed,
Hmm.
phenomenal job of rebuilding that cabin, which is already close to 50 years old. from
Yeah, that's
1976,
right.
you know.
Sure.
And our committee is basically, our job is to take care of that cabin. The cabin is actually owned by the Berkeley County Landmarks Commission, a government
Hmm.
extension agency. But it's our committee that does everything in terms of maintenance and repair and upkeep. Everything that's done at that cabin is done through our efforts. For example, Greg, several
Hmm.
years ago, we put a new cedar shingle roof
Right.
on. This year, and that was over $5,000. We just spent over $5,000 sealing the wood and the shingles
Mm,
with the
okay.
sealant. We spent almost $10,000 on electrical upgrades for the cabin and the ground. So
Hmm.
add all that up, and it comes to a lot of money. And we do a lot, 95% of that comes from fundraising. We are also blessed that our county government now annually has been giving us a grant every year of a couple thousand
Great.
dollars.
Hmm. Hmm.
Our festivals, our events are fundraisers for us. And we have local sponsors. It's hard to put into words how generous our local people are when it comes to businesses that will make
Hmm.
donations. They'll donate crates of water. They'll donate $500. We're just incredibly blessed here in West Virginia with some very generous people that
Excellent.
that help fund keep this cat
Hmm.
taken care of. Yeah.
Sure. Now, as far as its physical size, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it one large room with a loft with an upper loft area? Can you tell me a little bit about the inside, the interior of the cabin?
Yeah, the original cabin was just the one room with the loft above. In
Hmm.
1825, a descendant of Colonel Morgan added the south wing, which is also one room with a loft above, all
Hmm.
completely connected to the original. So while the Colonel was living there, it was just the one room and the loft above. The loft above, we know, was the bedrooms. There were as many as 6 or 7 beds in that one room. With one bed
Wow.
would sleep 3 children.
Oh my.
And
Yeah.
then mom and dad also would sleep upstairs.
Hmm.
But I've also learned that the colonel wasn't there a lot. He was a very busy man. He was affluent. He served as a magistrate, both for Orange County and then what would become Frederick County, that would eventually become Berkeley County. Um, he was quite often away on business. And I've even read accounts where they say people describe him as he was good to others but neglected his family.
Mm.
And
Hmm.
that's a trend we see, with modern people as well. They're so busy with their businesses and other things like
Hmm.
that. So,
Sure.
um, so yeah, but basically they all slept upstairs in that one room, and I can't imagine. I mean, in the wintertime, the body heat would help
Hmm. Sure.
because all they had was the one fireplace, and that was down below.
Right.
Yeah, so it must have been cold to sleep up there.
Matt, Colonel Morgan was unique in that he appears to be highly educated. I believe he attended a British university. And unlike many of the early settlers of Welsh descent,
Mhm.
some of the first in the 1600s came to the United States. They were Welsh Quakers. So it was for religious persecution. They took that dangerous journey across the Atlantic Ocean to come to the New World. Many other Welsh came here because of poverty. They were escaping poverty and lack of opportunity, even in their own nation, because of oppression by the English.
Yeah.
But Colonel Morgan appears to have been a highly educated, affluent individual in contrast to many other of the Welsh who came here.
He sure was. He was educated in London. Um, while he was in Delaware, he was a coroner and a tailor.
Mm,
He had fulfilled an apprenticeship as a tailor. A coroner is actually a high-ranking position.
Hmm.
back in the 18th century. So he basically was a very successful businessman. He was known as a man of piety and devout Christian values. He was Episcopalian, part of the Church of England.
Hmm.
And that is the church that built the first church in what would become West Virginia, Morgan's Chapel, was an Episcopalian church that the colonel built himself. So our first church was built by him. So yeah, he was definitely a man of a great reputation. Everywhere he went,
Hmm.
everyone just wanted to immediately put him at the top and make him, either a warden or a magistrate. And keep in mind, at that time, there weren't a lot of educated, as you said, a lot of educated people out here. So the
Hmm.
formation of, the first county here was Spotsylvania, which would become Orange, which would become Frederick, which would then become Berkeley over a
Hmm.
progression of over 150 years. So um, he was definitely sought after. He even was given both civil and criminal jurisdiction
Mm.
to try people. And he actually tried a murder case in nearby Jefferson County.
Wow.
A gentleman named Hyatt allegedly murdered someone, and Morgan was called in to basically be the judge. And he would find this man guilty, sentence him to jail. But like so many things back in the 18th century, somehow 5 years later, this Mr. Hyatt would get a pardon from the governor. So,
Okay. Yeah. That
but
still happens today.
yeah, exactly.
Presidents still do that today. So
They do
I
every
guess I
single.
understand.
Yeah,
Sure. That's
yeah.
another interesting thing about Colonel Morgan that's unique about him because the earliest Welsh settlers were dissenters against the Church of England. They were various forms of Protestantism that had rejected the Church of England. And here, Colonel Morgan was also unique in that way, aside from being highly educated and affluent, being connected with the Church of England. Very interesting. Anything else about his religious piety in the local community that he was known for? Or maybe some of his personal examples that he was known for that drove his religious beliefs?
Absolutely. For example, he also is the architect of the first road
Mm,
in what is modern West Virginia. The Frederick County, one of the first things they did when they formed, which by the way, Colonel Morgan was the one that named the county after Prince Frederick from Wales.
oh, interesting. Didn't
So
know that.
Frederick County, Virginia gets
Yeah.
its name from Colonel Morgan. So one of the first things they said, well, we need a road between Winchester and Colonel Morgan's plantation.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 12-mile stretch, basically. So they built the road and they called it Morgan's Road.
Mm.
Now, it opened up a lot of things for more people then to move out to the west, more settlers. Well, what started happening was people were knocking on Colonel Morgan's door saying, we are weary travelers. We come from Baltimore or Philadelphia or wherever. And actually, that Morgan's Road would later become known as the Philadelphia Highway
Mm.
in later days.
Yeah.
But the colonel would not turn away anyone. So he would allow people to stay with his 8 children and wife in
Oh
that
my.
small 20 by 20 cabin
Yeah.
and host them graciously.
Oh, wow.
Well, because of that, they always required rum. And
Mm-hmm.
he had to acquire a liquor license from the county of Frederick to be
Yeah.
able to serve rum in his own home. So he became known as the first tavern, in
Awesome.
addition to the other many firsts that he has.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so he would be very great, and this goes back to his religious beliefs, his piety. He
Mm-hmm.
would turn away no one. He would give them food, shelter, a warm bed, and I've even read an account. He even set up a small toll booth just north of the cabin today. I've actually found where I believe the foundation of the toll booth was.
Oh, cool.
Um,
Yeah.
so, and he did this to help fund paying for all these travelers, eating his food, drinking his rum, etc. And if I can expand a little bit more,
Sure.
a
Please
lot,
do.
a lot of people believe that when Europeans, such as the Welsh, they were, the whole Catholic Protestant thing was in full blown warfare over there, and a lot of the Welsh were Protestants.
Hmm.
The colonel was not. I mean, he was Church of England. It was the Church of England that was basically the ones that were considered to be oppressing all of the
Hmm.
Protestants. And
Right. Correct.
a
Yeah.
lot of people believe that when the Europeans came here, when they set foot on our soil, that oppression ended, but it did not,
Right.
because it just transferred into the form of
Hmm.
Church of England, the Episcopalians, then oppressing the Presbyterians and the Methodists and the Baptists, the Protestants, basically.
Hmm. Right.
So for close to 100 years, there was the same thing going on here as what they thought they were escaping in the old world.
Right.
And it's one of the great enigmas, Greg, that I've always tried to figure out Colonel Morgan, because he built the Episcopalian Church. He was
Hmm.
a devout Church of England man. In some parts of Virginia, the oppression was so strong from that group that even if you didn't attend, you still had to pay tithe.
Yes. Right.
And if you didn't tithe, you could have your land seized or you could
Hmm.
be jailed. That's how
Right.
severe it was. And here, Colonel Morgan was part of that. Now, in this part of Virginia, that wasn't so extreme. Those rules, you see that more on the coast in Southern Virginia. However, one of the things that always perplexed me was knowing he's part of that Church of England Episcopalian,
Hmm.
right behind the Morgan cabin, literally in his backyard, not part of his property, but a neighboring property, literally about 75 yards from his cabin.
Hmm.
In 1761, a Presbyterian church was built
Oh my. Yeah.
called the Cool Spring Presbyterian Church. Now, the colonel did not own that land, but he was powerful enough that if he just said, not in
Hmm.
my backyard,
Right.
they would have never built that church. But they did. Now, the colonel at that time, this was 1761, he would
Hmm.
die about 5 years later. He was an older man, I get that, in his 70s.
Hmm. Right.
However, he still wielded enough power. If he didn't want those heathen Protestants in his backyard,
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
could have, but he never stopped it. And he allowed that church to be built.
Hmm.
And then you look forward to his grandson, James Morgan, pardon me,
Hmm. Hmm.
who would serve as a Protestant chaplain in the Continental Army.
Very interesting.
So it's always been an enigma to me. And I have a theory, and I would love to hear others.
Hmm.
But I believe that when the colonel came here, he was a staunch British patriot. He was part of the Church of
Hmm.
England,
Sure.
and that says loud and proud, I'm a British
Hmm.
patriot. However, over the next few decades, he saw how the British were treating the colonists with tyranny and taxes and oppression and no representation. And I think over the next few decades, he started to change his thinking about how the Church of England operates, how the British Crown operates toward the colonists. And that's why I think his grandson would fight
Hmm.
for the Continental Army, fight for the Americans, not the British. I think he started
Yeah.
seeing that, and I think the evolution of, hey, this isn't right, we're being treated wrong. I believe that's why he allowed that Presbyterian church to be built just
Hmm.
75 yards behind his cabin. That's just my theory. I could be wrong.
Sure. Well, Matt, I think you're onto something. In all the videos that I've done on Americans of Welsh descent, and many of them have been on around these times, colonial period, leading up to the American Revolution. I believe all of them subliminally had in the back of their mind the way that either they or their fathers or grandparents were treated living in Wales. You look at someone like Colonel Morgan, he's highly educated, but there's still a reason he left Wales.
Yeah,
And it
yeah.
was most likely for opportunity,
Hmm.
usually the opportunity to own land, because there wasn't a lot of uh, good land in Wales to own, and most of it was owned by English overlords, and
Yeah,
it was almost impossible to buy your own land. So many came here for opportunity. But you know what? As time went on and they felt they were being oppressed by the British here in the colonies, they
yeah,
couldn't help but think, you know what? This is getting as bad as it was when I lived in Wales, or
yeah.
when my dad used to tell me how it was when he lived in Wales, or my grandfather used to
I,
mention the oppression and what it felt like to be oppressed by the English in Wales. And I think that theme comes back with so many of these remarkable individuals of Welsh descent around the time of the American Revolution
yeah,
that made them flip from being very faithful and loyal British subjects to saying, hey, you know what? This got getting out of hand. My freedoms are being restricted. All that I've worked for and the opportunities they're trying to take back away
yeah.
from me, and it's beginning to feel like I'm back in Wales. So,
That's exactly how
mhm,
I feel. He was a very intelligent man. He saw the writing
mhm,
on the wall. And again, in just two short generations, his grandson would be a
yeah,
chaplain in the Continental Army. He would be a Protestant chaplain.
hmm,
So there would be a complete switch, you know.
sure,
Um,
right.
and it's just amazing to see. I mean, we're actually doing research on that Cool Spring Church now.
Mm,
The state of West Virginia and the National Park Service have approved a grant.
hmm,
There are two graveyards attached to that church. And again, built in 1761, that's one of the earliest churches in our county. So we're
hmm,
going to do ground penetrating radar, and,
cool,
and
good.
we're going to map every single person, and have it. It's already part of a historic designated place, but it's going to be taken care of a lot better in the future.
Hmm.
So we feel that's an extension of Colonel Morgan's history, even though he didn't own it, he wasn't Presbyterian. The fact
Right.
he allowed it, to me, is just fascinating.
Yeah. It shows how open-minded he was. And about the same time in history, maybe a decade after he dies or so, men in Virginia, like Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, are beginning to make sure that part of the Virginia Constitution protects freedom of religion
Yeah.
so that anyone could worship freely without persecution, without feeling oppressed by the state of Virginia. And they did away with all of the requirements of tithing for
Yeah.
any particular church. So, he was kind of a forerunner
Yeah.
of what a decade later would become part of the state
Yeah.
of Virginia and
Right.
its protections against its protections against suppression of religious beliefs. So he was a remarkable man in many ways.
And you see the transformation of
Hmm.
a lot of Americans don't know that Virginia used to extend all the way past Kentucky.
Hmm.
Kentucky was once part of Virginia.
Yeah.
West Virginia was once part of Virginia.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
a lot of the reasons those things changed, whether it be religion or slavery,
Hmm.
being the reasons of basically the breakaway from Kentucky and West Virginia, um, Virginia was once a much, much bigger place. Same thing with Pennsylvania,
Sure. Right.
Delaware as well, and parts of Maryland. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, depending on the topic, I mean, West Virginia became a state during the Civil War, not only because of political differences, lack of representation,
Mm-hmm.
but the disagreement on the institution of slavery.
Yes, exactly.
The Western Virginians wanted nothing to do with slavery. They thought it was wrong, it was evil. Whereas the eastern part of what is today Virginia, that their whole economy ran on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why the Western Virginians left Virginia in the middle of a war.
So, Matt, not only was Colonel Morgan very talented and accomplished and a gifted individual, but his children and grandchildren were as well. Um, One notable child was Zachwill Morgan, who is known as the founder of Morgantown,
Yeah.
West Virginia. What do we know about his son Zachwill?
Zach Will was quite eccentric from what I've read.
Mm-hmm.
Like his father, he had that pioneer spirit. I greatly respect the fact that in 1761 he would build a house literally across the road from his father.
Mm-hmm.
Now, his father at that time was in his early 70s, and Zach will build his house in 61. And of course, the colonel would die in 1766. So
Okay.
he stayed there those 5 years to help take care of his father. And I greatly respect him for that.
Mm-hmm.
And, but after his father, after the colonel would pass away, he got the same desire to get up and go that
Mm.
his father did in 1726. So he would go out to actually him and David, his brother David, also
Okay. Yeah.
also went with him. And David doesn't get much credit for this because for some reason Zach Will's gotten all the credit for Morgantown, and possibly he did play the most important part. But
Mm-hmm.
David was also a contributor to the foundation of Morgantown, as well as the town of Fairmont, West Virginia.
Okay. Yeah.
So David and Zaquil. Now David would become later known as the Indian fighter because of his joining the militia and fighting against the Indians out to the west toward Ohio. But it was Zaquil and it was David, two of the colonel's sons that would go on to found Morgantown and Fairmont, West Virginia. So we're not just talking about Berkeley County, West Virginia's history, immediate
Mm-hmm.
history. We're also talking about a large section of the central part of West Virginia. And most people know Morgantown because of West
Mm-hmm.
Virginia University, obviously.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
But that's how much the Morgans played. That's how much of an influence they had on our small state's history. And it's something that we very much appreciate. And it's one of the reasons why growing up as a native West Virginian, you're taught these things,
Mm-hmm.
you develop this passion that later came to me in life and said, hey, I want to take care of that cabin. I want to,
Sure.
we also help take care of this Acquil Morgan house today.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So it's our desire to perpetuate that to the next generation through one of the things I always tell the kids is if there's one thing I want you to remember, West Virginia's history began right here, when we're at the Morgan cabin giving a
Mm-hmm.
tour. So when they walk away and they become older, oh, well, that's where West Virginia began at Colonel Morgan's house.
And if I recall correctly, that road in front of his house was the very first road in
Yeah,
modern day West Virginia.
right. Morgan's Road, 12 miles long. And yeah, it was the very first road. And eventually it would be extended to what is modern day US Route 11,
Mm-hmm.
which runs north and south between Martinsburg and Winchester, Virginia. So yeah, he would help engineer the first road, and it also shows how important he is that the first act that the Frederick County government did
Mm-hmm.
upon their formation and disillusionment from Orange County was the first thing they did. We need a road to the colonel's house. That's how important he was. That was the very first item. We got to get a road to the colonel's house because he's so important to our county government's formation.
Very interesting.
Shows you how respected he was,
Yes.
how needed he was.
So, Matt, I know that you also have a proud Native American lineage. What tribes were around in this wilderness area, and how did that influence Morgan, and what was his relationship with the Native American tribes around his cabin and around the vicinity of where he worked and lived?
Well, the tribes that were here when the Europeans arrived, this was known as the Massawomack area. They're also known as the Erie Indians.
Okay.
Their territory extended all the way from Lake Erie down to Western Maryland, all the way to Jefferson County, just east of Berkeley County in West Virginia. They were a Iroquoian speaking people, but they were a very warlike tribe. They were constantly at war with the Iroquois and other tribes. So, matter of fact, that would be their end, because they would pick a fight with the Seneca and eventually get destroyed by the Seneca of the Iroquois. So, but for hundreds of years, this was their territory. Now, when the Europeans arrived here, they found this area to have just small villages. I know some people have been taught there were no Indians here, there were only hunters. And I recently gave a lecture in Maine, and guess what they taught their kids? There were no Indians here. And I always say that has been put out there to ease white guilt about taking our land.
Yeah, sure.
They weren't living there. It's no big deal. We took their land anyway. But Massawomack were living here for hundreds of years. There's a lot of archaeological evidence of petroglyphs and different things they've left behind, occupation sites along our rivers and creeks. But at the time when the Europeans started arriving in this area in the early 1720s and 30s, there was a lot of warfare going on between the tribes. And the Iroquois were raiding this area from the north. The Catawba were coming up from the North Carolina region. They would raid these smaller tribes in this area. And so at the time when the Europeans arrived, there weren't a lot of large villages really left. We have to go back about 800 years to find archaeological evidence of large villages. So there was a lot of warfare going on. The Delaware were fighting the Catawba. This area has a lot of battlefields of those two tribes fighting each other, and the early settlers sitting back watching go, whoa.
Interesting.
So there was a lot of warfare. It's a part of our history a lot of people don't want to admit or talk about, but it's a fact, and a very well documented fact. So when the colonel would come here, right across the road and behind the Zachariah Morgan house, I had located an Indian village site using a drone survey. Now, I believe it probably dates back to about 1,000 years ago. But when you have that big, beautiful spring, Torytown Run, and that ground is pretty flat, and that, at least what I call West Virginia flat.
Right.
It's a great place to live. When we did an archaeological survey at the Zachariah Morgan kitchen house 6 years ago, we found Indian artifacts dating back 8,000 years old.
My, oh my.
So that shows you, first off, why the colonel chose that location. It's resource rich. You have the springs, you have level ground, you have moose, elk, bear, all of this game walking around the valley here. There was a large flint rock outcrop to the kitchen house for the Native Americans to make tools and weapon points out of. The same reason the Native Americans chose that is the reason the colonel chose that location. Resource rich.
Mm-hmm.
But we've also found several other village sites in and around that area. So we know that, it was definitely a place that humans lived at for at least 8,000 years. I believe way longer than that. But when the Europeans arrived, it was a very tumultuous time for Native Americans, not because of the white man,
Mm.
but because of what we were doing to each other. So when the colonel arrived, none of these villages were occupied.
Okay.
The closest occupation villages were probably 10 miles from there. So there weren't a lot of Native Americans in the area when the colonel arrived, which is why I believe he was allowed to arrive.
Mm.
Had there been a Native American tribe literally across the road from where he built that cabin, they would not allow that. They would have killed him.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
So at the time he arrived in that part of Bunker Hill, it was mostly empty of Native Americans. Sure, they would come hunting, or traveling
Mm-hmm.
through. But as far as his relationship with the Native Americans, we just don't know. It's just one of those things that there has been no documented evidence he ever had any conflict. I'm guessing because he was a savvy businessman, he traded
Mm-hmm.
with the Native
Sure.
Americans. I think he probably traded extensively. One of the things that's big in our culture um, is honor. And the colonel was a very honorable man, a man who kept his word. He only spoke the truth. And he got the trust of these Native Americans. They would have traded with him extensively.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe he traded with them. What's interesting is during the French and Indian War, 1754,
Yeah.
just 4 miles from there, the Shawnee massacred a settler family,
Mm.
and yet the colonel was spared. So that's
Mm-hmm.
why I believe he had good relations with Native Americans. They respected him. They didn't see him as a threat, and therefore they didn't. Because during the French and Indian War, most of the settlers vacated this area because they knew they would be destroyed. As far as we know, the colonel never left.
Mm-hmm.
And if
Mm-hmm.
he never left, that means he felt safe.
Sure. Sure.
So that's interesting to me that he stayed while most of the settlers in this area went back east until the war was over.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Shawnee had 5 villages not far from here in Winchester and Old Town, Maryland. They were very plentiful in this area, and they were very good warriors. He wouldn't have stood a chance.
Yeah. I'm glad you've mentioned that, Matt, because some people have this perception that uh, the white settlers and Indians or Native Americans were in constant conflict and
Hmm.
hated one another. And history doesn't necessarily reflect that. I did a video on Daniel Boone, and he grew up a Quaker. And as a
Yeah,
child, his parents had the Native Americans that surrounded where they lived for dinner
yeah,
and had really good relationships with them. Quakers, as a matter of fact, tried to purchase the land
yes.
as they would go farther and farther inland. They would try to purchase the land from the natives and try to have excellent relationships with them. And Daniel Boone, it was only in his mind the absolute last resort that he would pick up a rifle
Mhm.
and fire his rifle at a Native American because his instinct was to be hospitable and kind and to live with Native Americans rather than constantly trying to battle with
Yeah.
them and fight against them. So I'm really glad that you brought that point out.
Well, and to expand on that, I mean,
Hmm.
the Native Americans, there's so many documented stories about how they perceived Europeans. For example, you mentioned the Quakers. The
Hmm.
Quakers were mostly Dutch German, and they mostly settled in Pennsylvania.
Hmm.
Although in this area, one of the first other settlements, other than Morgan, were Quakers.
Hmm.
Um, and the Quakers did purchase the land. They did try to
Hmm.
trade and be good neighbors. In comparison to who settled Virginia, were the British.
Hmm.
We call them long knives. That was the indigenous nickname for
Uh-huh.
British settlers because of the sword.
Ah,
Called
okay.
them long
Yeah.
knives.
Hmm.
We consider them to be evil because
Mm.
they would look at you and say one thing and do the opposite.
Mm.
Whereas the Dutch and the Germans were Quakers.
Hmm.
My point being is, I believe they viewed Colonel Morgan like a Quaker, and
Hmm.
that he was an honorable man who kept his word. He didn't say to them, I'll do this, and then go do something behind their back to hurt them. So that's how the Native Americans perceived. The Germans and Dutch were perceived as friendly. We want to work with them, but the Virginians from Britain were
Hmm.
were savages. They were brutal. They were liars. They were long knives.
Fantastic. And by the way, you can find out more about Matt and his skills as a Native American researcher at bearspiritmountain.com. And I encourage you to check that site out. So, Matt,
Thank you.
as we wrap things up today, give us some good reasons why more people should come and visit the Morgan Cabin and explore that very interesting area of West Virginia.
Well, our Morgan cabin is so special to us. And the Facebook page that I take care of has
Hmm.
close to 5,000 followers.
Cool.
And I'm
Great.
constantly getting private messages from Morgan descendants.
Hmm.
And one of the first things they say was, I'm descended from Colonel Morgan. They are so,
Uh,
I just love the
yeah,
pride.
yeah.
And they also say, I'm Welsh. And I
Hmm.
love the pride of being Welsh. It's an amazing country with an amazing culture.
Hmm.
And the pride that they show, it energizes me to want to continue to do this. And if you're looking to come to a place where you have a Welsh immigrant who came here, I mean, he started out in Delaware. He lived there for a few years and then would migrate here. But
Hmm.
if you want to, he was 41 years old. He did it the hard way. And nothing was given to him. There was no Lowe's or Walmart to get lumber from. Everything, the stones for the fireplace to the timbers, everything had to be done with his and his family's hands. So we take great care of this little cabin. We have events all year long. Matter of fact, in December, our next event, we have what we call Sensory Santa. And I dress up
Hmm.
as Santa Claus.
Okay.
I will sit in the Morgan cabin. We advertise to all the local communities. This
Hmm.
event is geared towards special needs children.
Wonderful. Yeah.
They can come in. We put the kids on my lap. They get photos done, professional digital
Hmm.
photos.
Hmm.
All of this is free.
Wow.
And every child walks away, special needs or not, every child walks away with a gift from Santa.
Hmm.
So to get their photo taken inside the Morgan cabin
Hmm.
for free, it's what we want to do and give back to our community. And special needs kids are every bit a part of that community. So we have that event, and then in the spring we honor our veterans with the Veterans Day event. So uh, if you just want to come see the cabin, just contact me through Facebook, and I'm happy to arrange a date and time. We do school tours all the time. I even dress up as Colonel Morgan on occasion.
Okay.
And and I hope I do him justice. I don't feel I'm worthy,
Uh,
but I give it the best college try I can.
sure. You bet.
Um, but we show kids how they lived. We actually have little stations set up to show how settlers lived, how they processed food, how they hunted, how they did different things. So it's all about education and
Hmm.
preservation at the Morgan Cabin.
Fantastic. And if you'd like to contact Matthew, maybe you would just want to share some information with him, or maybe you'd like him to speak to your group, you can contact him at bearspiritmountain@yahoo.com. Is that the
Mhm.
best way to get a hold of you, Matt?
That is a good email address,
Great.
or through the Historic Morgan Cabin Association Facebook page.
Hmm.
If you'll send me a private message, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Because, doing archaeology, having a full-time job and the honeydew list keep,
Yeah, sure.
you know,
I understand that one.
but,
That's for sure.
but we would love to have anyone that wants to come out. We want to share this history with you. If you're a Morgan descendant, you're going to get, we're going to roll out the red carpet.
Right. Great. And that is so exciting to hear. And Matt, thanks a million for sharing your knowledge and enthusiasm with us today about Colonel Morgan. Morgan, appreciate you being on our podcast today.
Well, it's an honor to be on your podcast and always a pleasure to see and speak with you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you so much. And thank you for watching. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And please feel free to make any comments below if you would like to see more videos about Colonel Morgan or any other American of Welsh heritage. Let us know in the comments below. And until next time, this is Greg Thomas saying, Hoyle 'em now, or bye for now.